Are you ready to waste a few more minutes of your day with me in this completely unnecessary public service? Because, my friends, what you're about to hear isn't just family drama, it's a full-scale, emotional experiment designed by someone who clearly spent way too much time on Reddit and thought it was a life manual. Stick with me till the end, my friends, because this story starts with a beautiful wedding invitation, the kind that makes you go, ah, and ends with a very serious existential question. At what exact point do you cut off a family member without feeling like the villain? And you know the drill. If this were a video, this would be the moment to subscribe, hit that like button preemptively, comment later, and send it to that friend who lives for secondhand chaos. Take a breath. Let's begin. My sister was always special. Not special in a magical way. Special in a she always thinks she knows better than everyone else kind of way. Let's call her Clara. Because nothing about this story was ever clear. Clara had that charming in public, terrifyingly analytical introvert personality. The kind of person who says, I just want what's best for you while mentally dissecting your entire life. She didn't live her own life. She audited everyone else's. She had opinions on other people's relationships, decisions, traumas. All delivered with a sweet smile and perfectly polished moral superiority. So when she suddenly announced she was getting married, we all pretended to be surprised. Including her. The announcement came out of nowhere. Too fast. One day she was single. The next she was engaged. And not casually engaged. Engaged like this is going to be a big wedding. The invitation arrived in the mail. Thick paper. Elegant. Expensive. The kind you hold and immediately think, someone spent an unreasonable amount of money on this. It had embossed details, dramatic cursive font, floral designs. Everything screamed perfection. Everything except one small detail. No one
knew.
The groom.
Not me.
Not our parents. Not close friends. Not even that nosy aunt who somehow knows everything. When people asked, Clara smiled. That smile I now recognize as a red flag with teeth.
I'll tell you later, she said.
It's a long story. Later. Always later. My husband, let's call him Ethan, was the first to say it out loud. Doesn't that seem weird? He said it calmly, no accusations. Just genuine curiosity. And of course, I defended her. Well, people meet online. That's normal. Normal. The favorite word of people ignoring their instincts. But even I felt it, that uncomfortable twist in my stomach. The feeling you get in a movie when you know something bad is coming, but the character keeps walking toward the dark basement anyway. There were no old photos. No shared memories. No mutual friends. Just a name. And even that, she barely used. She always said, the groom. Never his name. The wedding day arrived way too fast. The church was stunning. Too stunning for a rushed engagement. White flowers everywhere. Live music. Perfect decor. It looked straight out of a magazine. The guests were real. The family was there. Friends too. Nothing, absolutely nothing, suggested anything was fake. And that, my friends, is what makes this whole thing even more disturbing. I watched Clara walk down the aisle. Radiant. Confident. Smiling like someone who already knew how the story would end. The dress fit her perfectly. Too perfectly. And then I saw the groom. There he was. Well-dressed.
Calm.
Strangely calm. No sweat. No shaking. No overwhelmed beloved look. He looked at Clara the way someone follows instructions. I leaned toward Ethan. Don't you think he looks off? I whispered. Ethan frowned but didn't want to start drama. Maybe he's just really calm.
Yeah, calm. Or trained.
The ceremony was flawless. Emotional vows. Real tears. Applause. Even the priest looked genuinely moved. I cried. I'll admit it. Because I'm human. And because no one suspects they're part of a lie when everything feels that real. The reception was even more impressive. Amazing food. Unlimited champagne. Loud music. Laughter. Collective family happiness on display. Until I noticed something. The groom was gone. At first, I thought he was in the bathroom. Then maybe greeting someone. Minutes passed. Then more. And Clara didn't look worried. Actually, she looked excited. That's when my blood ran cold. Suddenly, Clara grabbed the microphone, tapped her glass to get attention. That sound was the beginning of the disaster. Before we continue the celebration, she said with a smile, I need to share something special. Special. Never trust that word. The room went silent. I felt that awful gut feeling, the one that tells you something is very, very wrong. Clara took a deep breath. And then she said it. This marriage isn't real. Total silence. No clinking glasses. No coughing. Nothing. She laughed. Actually laughed. The groom is an actor. Everything here was organized. My brain took a few seconds to catch up. I felt heat, then cold. This, she continued, opening her arms, was an experiment. An experiment. That word hit harder than a slap. A loyalty test. She slowly turned her head and looked straight at Ethan. And in that exact moment, I realized something terrifying. This was never about her. The room stayed frozen. No one knew how to react because no one had a script for this. People looked at each other like maybe someone else understood what was happening. I looked at Ethan. Ethan looked at me. And for the first time in our relationship, neither of us knew what the correct emotion was supposed to be.
Shock?
Relief? Anger? Clara, meanwhile, looked energized, like someone who had been waiting weeks for applause. Over the past few weeks, she continued, voice steady, confident. I created different scenarios to observe my brother-in-law's behavior. She said it like she was presenting a case study. Innocent conversations. Accidental moments. Opportunities. My stomach tightened. I hadn't agreed to any of this. No one asked me. No one warned me. And yet there I was, sitting in the middle of a psychological experiment I didn't sign up for. I'm happy to announce, Clara said proudly, that he passed. A few people clapped. Out of confusion more than approval. Someone laughed nervously. Someone else whispered, this is insane. I couldn't move. Because I didn't feel relieved. I didn't feel grateful. I felt violated. Ethan slowly stood up. Not angry. Just stunned. You're telling me, he said carefully, that all of this was to test me? Clara nodded, almost lovingly. I needed to know if you were trustworthy. Needed. That word. As if her need justified everything. Something cracked inside my chest. Because no one asked if I needed this. No one wondered how this would affect me. This was never about protecting me. This was about Clara needing control. The party collapsed without officially ending. The music stopped. The lights felt too bright. Guests started leaving quietly, avoiding eye contact. The catering staff kept working because for them this was just another job. The actor slipped out through a side door. No goodbye. No explanation. Like a ghost who got paid well and disappeared. We sat at a table afterward.
Me, Ethan, Clara.
The silence was unbearable. Finally, I asked the simplest question.
Why? Just that. Why?
Clara hesitated for the first time all night. She looked down at her hands, twisted the fake ring around her finger. And then she said it. Because I was cheated on. There it was. I trusted someone completely, she continued, and no one warned me. No one protected me. She looked up at me. I didn't want you to be as naive as I was. Naive. That word hurt more than the rest. In that moment, everything clicked. This wasn't love. This wasn't care. This was projection. Clara wasn't trying to protect me. She was trying to rewrite her own trauma, using my life. She turned my marriage into her personal therapy session. And that's not something you just forgive and forget. Ethan and I left before dessert. We didn't say goodbye. We didn't explain. We just walked out. In the car, we finally spoke. We cried. We laughed nervously. We tried to make sense of something that made no sense. He apologized for not noticing sooner how strange everything was. I apologized for ignoring my instincts. Our marriage survived. But something else died that night. I thought that would be the end of it. I was wrong. Because the real consequences didn't happen in the wedding hall. They happened after. In the silence. In the messages. In the way people rewrote the story when Clara wasn't in the room. The next morning, my phone exploded. texts,
calls.
voice notes. Some people said, "Well, at least now you know your husband is loyal." Others said, "She meant well." Meant well. That phrase should come with a warning label. Because meant well is what people say when they don't want to admit someone crossed a line. I read those messages and felt something new settle in. Not sadness. Not anger.
Clarity.
Clara texted me 3 days later. A long message. Too long. She said she was hurt. That she didn't expect my reaction. That I should understand her trauma. She explained everything. She didn't apologize. And that told me everything I needed to know. Because when someone explains instead of apologizing, they're not sorry. They're just defending themselves. I agreed to meet her. Not for her.
For me. We met at a cafe.
Neutral territory.
Public.
Clara arrived calm.
Smiling.
Like we were just catching up. She ordered coffee. Talked about traffic.
About work.
I watched her like I was seeing her for the first time. And maybe I was. Do you know what the worst part was? I finally said. She looked up, attentive. It wasn't the fake wedding. It wasn't the actor. It wasn't the test. I paused.
It was that you never thought about me.
Only about yourself. She frowned. That's not true, she said quickly. I did it for you. That was the problem. I told her, calmly, that love doesn't test. Love either trusts or walks away. That no one has the right to traumatize someone else to feel safe. That my marriage was not her therapy project. She crossed her arms. So you'd rather live in denial?
No.
I'd rather live without her control. I stood up, left money on the table, and walked away. No yelling. No scene. That confused her more than any argument ever could. Weeks passed. Then months. And something unexpected happened. Without Clara in my life, I felt lighter. I slept better. I laughed without guilt. I breathed. Ethan and I talked a lot during that time. About boundaries. About loyalty. About family. We learned that passing a test doesn't mean you weren't put in danger. It just means someone believed they had the right to test you. And that alone is a betrayal. 1 year later, Clara texted again. Short message.
Can we talk?
I read it several times. No anxiety. No guilt. Just distance. I replied hours later.
Why?
She took a while to answer. To get closure. Closure. That word people use when they don't want to say I'm sorry. I didn't reply. Because not everything needs mutual closure. Some things close the moment you decide not to reopen them. Looking back now, I don't feel embarrassed about that fake wedding. I feel amazed. Amazed that I was surrounded by music, flowers, people, and still didn't see manipulation for what it was. But I also feel grateful. Because not all betrayals destroy you. Some reveal. So tell me, my friends, where would you draw the line? Would you forgive someone like that just because they share your blood? Or would you choose peace, even if it hurts? Drop it in the comments. Because if there's one thing this absurd story taught me, it's that sometimes the most unrealistic moment in your life is the one that finally brings you back to reality. Most people think cutting someone off is loud. They imagine screaming matches, dramatic ultimatums, doors slamming, family group chats exploding at 3 a.m. That wasn't how it happened. It was quiet. And somehow that was worse. Because silence gives people space to rewrite the story. And, oh, did they rewrite it? At first, it came wrapped in concern. Well, she just cares too much.
She's been through a lot. You know how she is.
Those sentences started floating around like excuses no one wanted to claim ownership of. And I noticed something interesting. No one ever asked how I was doing. They asked if I was over it. They asked if I was ready to move on. They asked if I was willing to be the bigger person. Funny how the bigger person is always the one who got hurt. Family dinners became strange. Clara wasn't there. But her presence was. In the pauses. In the careful phrasing. In the way conversations danced around her name like it was radioactive. Someone would start a sentence and stop halfway. Someone else would change the subject. It was like watching people try to ignore a crack in the wall while insisting the house was fine. One night, After one of those dinners, Ethan said something that stuck with me. He said carefully, "If this had been anyone else not your sister, no one would be asking you to forgive them." And that was it. That was the sentence that snapped everything into focus. Because he was right. If a friend had staged a fake wedding to test him, people would have called it unhinged. If a coworker had done it, they'd be fired. If a stranger had done it, there would probably be legal consequences. But because it was family, it was suddenly complicated. That's when I started paying attention. Not just to Clara. To patterns. To how often family was used as a free pass. To how many times I had swallowed discomfort just to keep the peace. The fake wedding wasn't an isolated incident. It was escalation. When we were younger, Clara used to test people too. Friends. Boyfriends. Even me. Shed setup scenarios. Ask leading questions. Watch reactions. Back then, we called it intuition. Now, I call it control. Ethan supported me through all of it. But I could tell something else was happening with him too.
Had always been polite.
Easygoing. Non-confrontational. This situation changed that. He started asking questions. Not aggressively. Just firmly. Why is this okay?
Who decided that?
Why does her trauma outrank everyone else's boundaries? And watching him do that made me feel stronger. Like we were finally on the same team against the same problem. Then came the indirect messages. The "I'm not trying to pressure you," but messages. The "she's really struggling" messages. The "life is short" messages. Every single one of them carefully avoided the word apology. That wasn't an accident. One afternoon, my mother called me. Her voice was tired. "She's not doing well," she said. I closed my eyes. "I'm sorry to hear that," I replied honestly. There was a pause. "Aren't you worried?" I chose my words carefully. "I'm worried about anyone who's hurting," I said. "But I'm no longer willing to hurt myself to fix someone else." She didn't answer right away. When she finally spoke, her voice was softer. "I don't know how to fix this." And for the first time, I said it out loud. "You don't have to." That was the moment I realized something crucial. I wasn't responsible for holding the family together. I never had been. I'd just been assigned that role without my consent. Months passed. Life settled. The drama faded into background noise. And then, unexpectedly, something else happened. People started telling me things. Quietly. One cousin admitted Clara had always made her uncomfortable. A former friend confessed Clara used to test her loyalty too. A coworker once distanced herself after feeling analyzed. Piece by piece, the picture filled in. I wasn't the first. I was just the first who didn't accept it. And that realization came with relief. And grief. Because accepting the truth means letting go of the version of your family you hoped existed. Clara tried one last time. Not with words. With nostalgia. She sent an old photo. Us as kids. Smiling. Arms around each other. No message. Just the image. I stared at it for a long time. Then I put my phone down. Because memories don't erase patterns. And love isn't proven by how long you've known someone. It's proven by how safely you're allowed to exist around them. I never blocked her. I didn't need to.
Distance did the job.
Now, when people ask about my sister, I don't explain. I don't justify. I just say, we're not close. And that's enough. If there's one thing I want you to take from this, my friends, it's this. Not everyone who hurts you is a villain. Some truly believe they're the hero. And that makes them even more dangerous. So tell me, have you ever been tested by someone who claimed to love you? Have you ever been asked to sacrifice your peace for someone else's comfort? Where did you draw the line? Or are you still standing in a room full of flowers, music, and red flags? Telling yourself it's probably fine? There's a strange grief that comes with realizing you were never crazy. That the discomfort you felt wasn't overreaction. It was information. And once you see that, you can't unsee it. After everything settled, I replayed the wedding in my head more times than I care to admit. Not the reveal. Not the chaos. The little moments. The way Clara smiled before walking down the aisle. The confidence. The control. She wasn't nervous because nothing was at risk for her. She already knew the ending. And that's when it hit me. The test was never about whether Ethan would cheat. It was about whether she could orchestrate reality and have everyone play their part without questioning her. And for a while it worked. What scared me the most wasn't the fake wedding. It was how many people accepted it once it was exposed. How quickly they adjusted their morals to keep the peace. Well, at least now you know he's loyal. As if loyalty discovered through humiliation was somehow more valuable. As if the ends justified the emotional ambush. That's when I learned something uncomfortable about people. Many don't actually care what's right. They care what's convenient. Ethan and I talked about that a lot. About how easily lines get blurred when someone claims good intentions. About how dangerous it is to confuse intensity with love. He told me something that stuck. If someone needs to control the outcome to feel safe, they're not ready to be trusted. And honestly, that sentence changed how I see relationships forever. Time did what time always does. It softened the edges. Not the truth.
Just the ache.
Family gatherings became easier. The tension faded. Not because things were resolved, but because I stopped participating in the narrative that required me to be quiet. And that, apparently, was enough. Clara never apologized. Not really. She hinted. She circled. She implied. But she never said the words that matter. I was wrong. I hurt you. I'm sorry. And that told me everything I needed to know. Because people who truly understand the damage they caused don't negotiate accountability. They take it. I don't hate her. That surprises people. But hate would mean she still has power over my emotional energy. She doesn't. What I feel instead is distance. And distance, I've learned, can be an act of self-respect. Sometimes I wonder if she tells the story differently now. If she paints herself as misunderstood. If she frames it as concern gone wrong. Maybe she believes that version. People often do. It's easier than sitting with the truth. The truth is this. Love that needs to test you isn't love. Protection that humiliates you isn't protection. And family that demands silence in exchange for belonging isn't family. It's a performance. And I already played my role once. Never again. So, here is my question to you, my friends. What would you have done? Would you have stayed quiet to keep the peace? Would you have forgiven just to avoid discomfort? Or would you have walked away, even knowing people would judge you for it? Because the hardest part isn't leaving. It's accepting that some people will never understand why you had to. And before you go, if this story made you feel seen, or uncomfortable, or a little too understood, do me a favor. Subscribe to the channel. Hit that like button. And stick around. We tell the stories people whisper about. The ones that sound unreal. Until you realize how familiar they are. And trust me, my friends, there are plenty more where this came from.